You know you can't. You know you can't. You know you can't count on him. You know that's no joke. You know you can't count on him to do that. You know you can't count on him to do that. And you know.
It's one of the oldest tactics in the lawyer's playbook, but when a lawyer tries to tell you what you know, typically it is because they have not proven what they want you to believe. Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and it is time to
know your vlog.
Now, I, like so many of you, have been totally transfixed on this entire impeachment process. It has been fascinating from a legal perspective, from a historical perspective, from a human perspective. And I've done a bunch of vlogs on the subject. I'm going to link a playlist right up here in case you want to go give those videos a watch. And the entire impeachment process has gone through multiple stages. We had the discovery mass media frenzy stage, we had the impeachment inquiry hearings before the House stage, and now we have the impeachment trial before the Senate stage. Now, full disclosure, while I have been transfixed on the impeachment process, I am getting a little impeachment out. And while I've been following the day-to-day of what's been going on in the trial before the Senate, I haven't been watching all of it. But I've been watching the most important parts. And yesterday, actually thanks to Legal Eagle's coverage of the matter, I watched 9 minutes of Adam Schiff's closing arguments. And watching it, I couldn't help but notice the textbook lawyer tactics, and I couldn't help but wondering, who is this convincing?
Wow. Holy sh...
Alright, jokes aside, and regardless of how one feels about the substance of the issue, Adam Schiff is in fact employing very strategic techniques that lawyers often use. And this should come as no surprise. Adam Schiff is an attorney. He studied at Harvard Law School, he clerked with a judge, and he even worked as an attorney before going into politics. He is an attorney, and whether or not you like him, he seems to be intelligent, and he is employing some of the basic manipulation tactics that lawyers use in pleading. But don't take my word for it, because you know that he is.
You know you can't. You know you can't. You know you can't count on him.
You know that's no joke. You know you can't count on him to do that. You know you can't count on him to do that. And you know.
And it's something that I've always said. When someone tells you what you know, they're not actually telling you what they think you know you know. They are trying to manipulate into believing what they say you know.
Try to say that 5 times fast.
It's a classic manipulation tactic because when someone tells you what you know, and if you don't actually know or believe it, you begin to question your own intelligence for not knowing it or believing it. And you begin to be more amenable to believing that you actually know it so that you don't look stupid in the eyes of the person who says you know it. But it is not the only manipulation tactic that Adam Schiff uses in his closing arguments. And I know that this might irritate a lot of you, but I'm not even saying this as a critique. These are tactics that the most skilled attorneys use for the purposes of manipulation in their pleadings because that's what a lawyer's job is. To convince by any means, to manipulate a judge or jury into thinking that they are right. And so what other tactics does Adam Schiff use in his closing arguments?
This brings me to the last point I want to make tonight, which is, okay, he's guilty.
Alright, and there we have yet another tactic. Let's take for granted the most fundamental disputed core issue. Let's take it for granted and let's move on in the argument. People who already love Schiff are going to love him for doing it. People who already hate Schiff are going to hate him for doing it, and people who didn't really appreciate what he was doing can now form an opinion. Okay, he did it. Let's take for granted the core issue as being true. What now? Let's shift the entire debate from whether or not he did it to taking for granted that he did it, so what now? There's an amazing principle in economics called Parkinsons Law on mundanity. The idea behind it is that people can and will spend excessive amounts of time on the most mundane issues, but they will gloss over the most complex. Ask people how they should balance the schedules and the hierarchy of legal aids working for lawyers, and people will not have much to say on it. Ask them where to put the water cooler, people can talk for hours. It should be by the elevator so it can be most accessible. It should be in a corner so that it doesn't cause traffic in the hallways, etc., etc., etc. When something is easy to understand, everyone's going to have an opinion on the subject. When something's a little harder to address, people are going to shy off a bit. And what Adam Schiff is doing right now is sort of like a lawyer's application of Parkinson's Law on mundanity. The most complicated question in fact and in law in this entire impeachment process is whether or not Trump in fact committed an impeachable offense. It is a complex question in law. It is a complex question in terms of appreciation of the facts. And what does Adam Schiff do in his closing arguments? Okay, he did it. Take for granted he did it. What now? We no longer need to discuss the most complex question at issue. We can take for granted that it is a fact. Now we can move on to the punishment, something that is easy to understand and everyone will have an opinion on. And it's a good tactic if you don't appreciate that that's what's being done. You know, watching a magic trick is much less interesting when you know how it's done. When you know what the trick is, when you know where the sleight of hand comes in. And I've got to tell you, the most frustrating thing as an attorney is having to sit there and listen to opposing counsel employ these techniques without being able to interrupt them, shake their heads and say, God, I know exactly what you're doing right now and it's driving me nuts.
You know, I know what you're doing right now and I don't like it.
But it can be an effective tactic. And what are some of the other dastardly lawyer tactics that Adam Schiff employs in his closing arguments? Adam Schiff employs another one of the 101 lawyer manipulation tactics, which is to repeat the question or repeat the issue 2, sometimes 3 times in a very hypnotic manner. Hypnotic if it's working, convincing if you're already on his side, and enraging if you're not on his side.
Does he really need to be removed? Does he really need to be removed? We have an election coming up. Does he really need to be removed? You know, is there really any doubt about this? I mean, do we really have any doubt about the facts here? If right doesn't matter, that's what they do in the old country, or the old country that my great-grandfather came from, or the old countries that your ancestors came from, or maybe you came from.
And here's another tactic that's probably going to infuriate anybody who notices it and is not on Adam Schiff's side. The straw man reformulation of the question at issue.
You know, is there really any doubt about this? I mean, do we really have any doubt about the facts here? Does anybody really question whether the president is capable of what he's charged with? Capable of what he's charged with?
Does anybody really question whether or not the president is capable of what he is charged with? As though that's the question. There is literally virtually no one on earth that is not capable of what is being charged with the president, because all it takes in order to be charged with that is a mouth. Of course the president is capable of what he is charged with. Every member of government is capable of what the president is charged with. The question is not whether or not the president is capable of that of which he is charged. The question is whether or not the president is guilty of that of which he is charged. But this reformulation of the question to sort of lower the burden of proof in the mind of the viewers is an amazingly manipulative tactic. And again, I am saying it in a non-judgmental but purely Machiavellian sense. There is a reason why Adam Schiff is rephrasing the question like this. Is anyone denying that the president is capable of what he is charged with? Of course, nobody would deny it because it's an impossible thing to deny. It is, however, not the question at issue. But by somehow suggesting that it might be ancillary to the question at issue, it allows people to say, yeah, he's capable of it, he must be guilty of it.
It's pretty obvious whether we can say it publicly or we can't say it publicly.
And this is sort of a variation of the you-know form of manipulation. The suggestion that you believe something deep down but can't say it publicly to plant the seed of doubt in you that, hey, maybe I do believe this deep down. Litigation is manipulation. It's manipulation based on the facts, the law, or emotions, and when you have more or less in any one category, you focus more or less on those in the other categories. Less facts, focus on the law. Less facts and law, focus on the emotions. Less emotions, focus on the facts. And here what we have is a lawyer telling you what you believe, and suggesting that even if you don't know that you believe it, to cast doubt on the reasons for which you don't believe it. And it can be tremendously effective if you don't appreciate that that is what is being done. And then for the rest of Schiff's closing argument, because he's already framed it whereby we've taken for granted the very question at issue, we move into a bunch of prospective concerns that have yet to materialize.
Now you may be asking, how much damage can he really do in the next several months until the election? A lot. And let's say they start dumping documents. Let's say they start dumping some real things they hacked from Burisma. Let's say they start dumping some fake things they didn't hack from Burisma, but they want you to believe they did. Let's say they start blatantly interfering in our election again. So what if China does overtly or covertly start to help the Trump campaign?
We move into a closing argument that is no longer even dealing about evidence regarding the questions at issue, but rather prospective concerns that should trouble everybody. Emotional manipulation based on the fear of what might happen. There's an expression that all is fair in love and war. Well, litigation is a form of warfare. It's a form of warfare fought with words and manipulation, and that is exactly what is going on right now.
Because right matters. Because right matters. And the truth matters. Otherwise, we are lost.
Emotional Manipulation 101. Get emotional in your closing arguments and hope to sway people with those emotions. The effectiveness of the manipulation is going to depend on your openness to the manipulation. If you like Adam Schiff and you already agree with his positions, you are going to be moved by that speech. If you don't like Adam Schiff, if you already don't believe a word he is saying, you might be physically nauseated by his speech. And if you're in the middle, you might be torn. You might be torn by what looks like sincere emotions. You may be sufficiently moved by the emotional side of the arguments that you actually didn't realize that we have moved off of the actual question at issue. And that is the name of the litigation game. Now, some of these strategies work more or less well on a judge. I can tell you from experience that when a lawyer stands up in front of a judge and tries to tell the judge what the judge knows, the judge sometimes just stops them and says, whoa, just make your evidence and I will come to my own conclusions. And it's something my father told me from the earliest days of the practice. Don't tell a judge what the judge needs to believe. Lead the judge to where you want the judge to get. Don't tell them that the opposing party is a liar. Present to them the evidence and lead them to no other conclusion than the opposing party is lying. You'll notice that when you push or pull someone, you are going to meet resistance, physical or psychological. When you get someone to lead you somewhere, or when you get them to voluntarily follow you, then you get them there without resistance. Whether or not Adam Schiff is pushing or pulling too much so as to meet resistance, or willingly leading people to where he wants them to get, is going to be a matter of perspective. But at the very least, now you can appreciate the very subtle tactics that lawyers use in pleading to get you to go to where they want you to be. All right, and with that said, if anybody wants to know what the life of a young lawyer is like, I made a video about it. I'll post it right here. If you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comment section below, and share my channel with someone. It'll help me grow. If you want to support the channel, the support links are in the pinned comment. You can get some merch. There's a PayPal link for anybody who feels more comfortable with that. And now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!